The dust cloud rose behind the wagon wheels like a funeral shroud, and Sarah Reynolds knew she was running out of time before her body gave out completely. She gripped the reins with blistered hands, her eyes burning from the relentless Texas sun that beat down on the road leading into Linden, a small settlement 30 miles west of San Antonio. Her 7-year-old daughter Emma sat beside her, too quiet for a child her age, her small face pinched with hunger and worry. Behind them, the wagon creaked under the weight of everything they owned, which amounted to little more than worn blankets, a few cooking implements, and the crushing debt her late husband had left behind like a curse. Sarah was 24 years old and felt ancient. 3 months had passed since cholera took Robert in the spring of 1878, leaving her with their daughter, a failing farm and creditors who circled like buzzards. She had sold everything she could, watched strangers cart away her wedding china, her mother's rocking chair, even the good plow. It had not been enough. The bank had taken the land anyway, and Sarah had loaded what remained into this borrowed wagon, promising to return it to her neighbor once she reached her aunt's place in Linden. If her aunt was still alive, if she would take them in. If Sarah could make it there without collapsing, her arms trembled as she guided the horses around a bend in the road. Black spots danced at the edges of her vision. When had she last eaten? Yesterday morning, she thought, or maybe the day before. She had given Emma the last of the dried beef that morning, watching her daughter chew slowly to make it last. The canteen held perhaps 2 more swallows of warm water. "Mama," Emma's voice was small, frightened. "Mama, you do not look well." Sarah tried to smile but felt her lips crack. "I am fine, sweetheart, just tired. We will be in Linden soon." But she was not fine. The world tilted sideways, and Sarah felt the reins slipping through her fingers. She heard Emma scream her name, felt the hard jolt as her body hit the wagon bench, then nothing. When she woke, strong arms were lifting her. Sarah's eyes fluttered open to see a man's face above her, weathered and concerned, with dark eyes that held something like kindness. She tried to speak, to tell him about Emma, but her throat was too dry. "Easy now," the man said, his voice deep and steady. "I have got you. Your little girl is safe. Just rest." Sarah wanted to protest, to fight, to maintain the iron control that had kept her moving these past months, but her body had different ideas. She felt herself being carried, heard the man calling out instructions to someone else, and then consciousness slipped away again like water through her fingers. Isaac Henderson had been riding the fence line of the ranch where he worked when he spotted the wagon listing dangerously on the road. At first, he thought it was abandoned, but then he saw the small figure of a child trying desperately to control 2 horses that sensed no firm hand on the reins. He had spurred his mount forward, reaching the wagon just as it threatened to tip into the shallow ravine beside the road. The woman had already collapsed by then, her body slumped over the bench seat while the little girl cried and pulled at her arm. Isaac had seen poverty and desperation before. The years following the war had been hard on everyone, but especially on women left alone. This one looked half-starved, her dress hanging loose on a frame that had once been fuller, her face pale beneath the sunburn. He had lifted her carefully, surprised by how little she weighed, and secured her in the back of the wagon while calming the child with quiet words. Then he had taken the reins himself and driven the wagon toward the Harper ranch where he worked, knowing that Mrs. Harper had a good heart and would not turn away a woman and child in need. That had been 2 days ago. Now, Isaac stood in the doorway of the small guest room, watching the widow sleep. Mrs. Harper had identified her as Sarah Reynolds, the niece of old Margaret Riley who lived in town. Margaret had died last winter, Mrs. Harper explained sadly, but no one had known how to contact her relatives. Sarah had been heading toward a home that no longer existed. "Poor thing, Mrs. Harper said softly beside him. "Dr. Morrison says it is exhaustion and starvation. A few more hours in that sun and she would have died. The little girl, too." Isaac's jaw tightened. "What will happen to them?" "I do not know," Mrs. Harper sighed, smoothing her apron. "She has no family here now. The child says they have nowhere else to go." Isaac nodded slowly, unable to tear his eyes away from the sleeping woman. Even in her depleted state, he could see she had been beautiful once, would be again with proper food and rest. But it was more than that. Something in the determined set of her jaw, even in sleep, spoke to him. This was a woman who had fought hard and would fight harder still. "Let them stay," he heard himself say. "I will cover their expenses." Mrs. Harper looked at him in surprise. Isaac Henderson was a good man and a hard worker, but he kept to himself mostly, saving his wages for the ranch he planned to buy one day. "That is generous of you, Isaac." "It is the right thing," he said simply. Then he turned and walked back outside, needing the open air to clear his head. He did not understand the pull he felt toward this woman he did not know, but he recognized it as something important, something that would change his life if he let it. Sarah woke slowly, surfacing from dreams of falling and endless roads. The bed beneath her was soft, softer than anything she had felt in years. Clean sheets, the smell of lavender. For a moment she could not remember where she was and panic flooded through her. "Emma," she gasped, sitting up too quickly. The room spun. "Easy, dear." A middle-aged woman appeared at her bedside, gently pressing her back against the pillows. "Your daughter is fine. She is in the kitchen having soup and bread with my cook. I am Miriam Harper. You are at my ranch about 5 miles outside of Linden." Memory returned in fragments. The wagon, the darkness closing in strong arms. "There was a man," Sarah said, "Isaac Henderson. He found you on the road and brought you here. You have been sleeping for almost 2 days. Dr. Morrison says you were completely exhausted." Mrs. Harper's voice was kind but firm. "When did you last eat a proper meal?" Sarah tried to think. I do not remember. A week, maybe more. There was not much money and Emma needed to eat." "Well, you will eat now. I will bring you some broth to start, then something more substantial once your stomach can handle it." Mrs. Harper stood but paused at the door. "I am sorry about your aunt, dear. Margaret was a good woman. I wish we had known you were coming." Tears burned in Sarah's eyes. Her last hope gone. "I did not know she had passed. I should have written ahead, but I had to leave. The bank, the creditors, I could not stay." "I understand. You rest now. We will figure out what comes next when you are stronger." Over the following days, Sarah slowly recovered under Mrs. Harper's care. She learned that Isaac Henderson worked as a ranch hand, that he was 27 years old and had been saving to buy his own place for years. He was quiet, Mrs. Harper said, but reliable and honest. He had insisted on paying for Sarah and Emma's room and board until Sarah could get on her feet. "Why would he do that?" Sarah asked, bewildered. "He does not even know me." Mrs. Harper smiled. "Isaac has always had a good heart, even if he does not show it often. He lost his own mother young. Perhaps he sees something in your situation that moves him." Sarah felt a strange mixture of gratitude and shame. She was not accustomed to charity, had always worked hard and paid her own way. But she was also practical enough to know she had no choice but to accept help right now. She needed to regain her strength, find work, and build a life for Emma. Pride was a luxury she could not afford. A week after her arrival, Sarah was strong enough to leave her room. Mrs. Harper had found some dresses that fit her reasonably well, hand-me-downs from a cousin. Sarah braided her brown hair, pinched her cheeks to bring some color to them, and went to find her benefactor. She discovered Isaac in the barn, mending a bridle. He looked up when her shadow fell across the doorway, and Sarah got her first clear look at him. He was tall, with broad shoulders and work-roughened hands. His dark hair needed cutting, falling into his eyes, which were a deep brown that reminded her of creek water. His face was handsome in a rugged way, with a strong jaw and a nose that had been broken at least once. "Mr. Henderson," she said, her voice steadier than she felt, "I wanted to thank you. Mrs. Harper told me what you have done for my daughter and me. I cannot repay you now, but I promise I will. Every cent." Isaac set down the bridle and stood, suddenly awkward. "No need for that, madam. I am just glad I came along when I did. There is every need." Sarah stepped into the barn, determined that he understand. "I do not accept charity lightly. I will find work in town and pay you back." "What kind of work?" Isaac asked, not unkindly. "Jobs are scarce, especially for a woman alone." Sarah lifted her chin. "I can cook, clean so. I can keep books. I managed my husband's farm accounts. And who will watch your little girl while you work?" The question struck at Sarah's deepest fear. She had no answer. Emma was too young to be left alone, and Sarah knew no one in Linden who would care for her, seeing her distress. Isaac felt something twist in his chest. "I am not trying to discourage you, madam. Just being practical. You need time to sort things out, find the right situation. A few weeks of help will not bankrupt me." "Why are you doing this?" Sarah asked quietly. Truly, Isaac considered the question, looking for words to explain something he did not fully understand himself. "My mother died when I was 10, he said finally. "My father took to drink afterward and we lost everything. We wandered from town to town, me trying to find work, him trying to find the bottom of every bottle. A rancher in New Mexico finally took us in, gave me steady work, taught me the trade. But by then, my father was too far gone. He died 2 years later." Isaac met her eyes. If someone had helped us sooner, if someone had been willing to carry some of the burden, maybe things would have been different. "So when I saw you on that road, your little girl crying, you half dead from trying to do everything alone, I thought, maybe I could be that someone for you." Sarah felt tears slip down her cheeks. "I do not know what to say. Say you will rest and eat and get your strength back. Say you will let someone help you for once." Isaac's voice was gentle. "Say you will give yourself time to figure out what comes next without the weight of the world on your shoulders." "I am not used to asking for help," Sarah whispered. "I know, I can see that, but maybe it is time to learn." Isaac picked up his hat from a nearby post. "I have got to check the north pasture. Mrs. Harper is making beef stew for supper. You should eat at least 3 bowls." Despite herself, Sarah laughed. It felt strange, that sound coming from her throat after so many months of grief and struggle. "I will try for 2. "We will start there," Isaac said, and the small smile he gave her made her heart do something unexpected in her chest. Over the following weeks, Sarah grew stronger. Color returned to her cheeks, and the hollows beneath her eyes filled out. Emma blossomed under the attention and regular meals, becoming again the playful child she had been before her father's death and the hard months that followed. Sarah helped Mrs. Harper with household tasks, refusing to be idle despite her host's protests. She cooked and mended, weeded the kitchen garden, and helped with the preserving. She was determined to earn her keep, even if Isaac would not let her repay him in coin. Isaac found himself inventing reasons to come to the main house. He needed to discuss the supply order with Mrs. Harper. He wanted to check if the pump in the kitchen was still leaking. He wondered if anyone had seen his work gloves. Each excuse brought him into Sarah's presence, and each encounter left him wanting more. He watched her with Emma, the patience and love she showed her daughter. He heard her laugh at something Mrs. Harper said while they worked together in the kitchen. He saw the way she watched the sunset from the porch, her face peaceful for the first time since he had found her. Slowly, like the turning of seasons, Isaac Henderson fell in love. Sarah felt it too, though she fought against it harder. She had been a good wife to Robert, had mourned him sincerely. The idea of feeling something for another man so soon seemed like a betrayal. Yet she could not deny the way her pulse quickened when Isaac entered a room, or how she listened for his footsteps on the porch. She found herself noticing small things about him. The way he was gentle with the horses, how he spoke to Emma with respect rather than condescension, the kindness in his eyes when he looked at her. One evening in late August, Isaac found Sarah alone on the porch after supper. Emma was inside with Mrs. Harper, learning to knit. The sky was painted in shades of orange and purple, and crickets sang in the grass. "Beautiful evening," Isaac said, settling into the chair beside her. "Yes," Sarah agreed. "I never tire of watching the sunset. It was one of the few pleasures I had during the difficult times. No matter how bad the day was, the sky would still paint itself pretty at the end of it." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Isaac said, "I have been thinking about your situation." Sarah tensed. "Oh." "There is a schoolhouse in Linden. The last teacher left to get married, and they have been looking for someone new. It would not pay much, but enough to live on if you are careful. And Emma could attend classes with you there." Hope fluttered in Sarah's chest. "I have no formal training as a teacher. You said you kept books, and Mrs. Harper says you are well read. That is more education than most folks around here have. I could speak to the town council if you are interested." "I am interested," Sarah said quickly. Then more carefully, "But I worry about accepting more help from you. You have already done so much." Isaac turned to face her fully. "Sarah, I know you value your independence. I respect that. But helping someone you care about is not charity. It is just what you do." Sarah's breath caught. "Someone you care about." Isaac had not meant to say it that way, but now the words were out there, hanging in the evening air between them. "Yes," he said simply. "I care about you. About Emma too. These past weeks, having you here, watching you heal and smile again, it has meant something to me. More than I expected." "Isaac." Sarah did not know how to finish the sentence. Her heart and her head were at war. "I am not asking for anything," Isaac said quickly. "I know it has not been long since your husband passed. I know you probably think I am a fool. I just wanted you to know that helping you is not a burden I am carrying. It is a choice I make gladly." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes again. She seemed to cry so much lately, all the emotions she had locked away during the survival months finally finding their release. "You are not a fool. You are one of the kindest men I have ever met. But Isaac, I am not free to care for someone, not yet. My heart is still sorting through the grief and the guilt and everything that happened." "I understand," Isaac said, though his eyes were sad. "I can wait. That is not fair to you. Let me decide what is fair to me." Isaac stood, settling his hat on his head. "Think about the teaching position. Let me know if you want me to speak to the council." He left her there on the porch, and Sarah sat for a long time watching the stars emerge. She thought about Robert, about the life they had planned and lost. She thought about the months of struggle, the crushing weight of trying to survive alone. And she thought about Isaac, about his quiet strength and unexpected kindness, about the way he made her feel safe for the first time in so long. The next morning, Sarah found Isaac before breakfast. "I would like you to speak to the council about the teaching position," she told him. "And Isaac, I want you to know that I do care about you. I'm just not sure what to do with that feeling yet." The smile he gave her was worth more than all the gold in California. The Linden Town Council met the following week in the back room of the general store. Isaac had spoken to several members beforehand, and they were eager to meet Sarah. The town needed a teacher badly. The The children had been running wild since Miss Peterson left in June, and parents were growing concerned. Sarah wore her best dress, the blue calico that Mrs. Harper had altered to fit her. She had pinned her hair up carefully and practiced what she would say. Still, her hands shook as she entered the store. The council consisted of 5 men: the store owner, the banker, the livery operator, the saloon keeper, and the town's only lawyer. They questioned her about her education and her experience. Sarah answered honestly, explaining that while she had no formal teaching training, she had been educated by a governess as a girl and had continued her studies through reading. She had taught her younger siblings their letters before she married, and she had already begun working with Emma on her schooling. "What about discipline?" asked Mr. Thornton, the banker. "Some of these children can be quite wild. Can you manage a classroom?" Sarah lifted her chin. "I managed a farm, Mr. Thornton, when my husband was ill and after he passed. I dealt with creditors and drought and all manner of difficulties. I believe I can handle some spirited children." The men exchanged glances. Mr. Garrett, the lawyer, leaned forward. "Mrs. Reynolds, I will be frank with you. We need a teacher and options are limited. You seem intelligent and capable. The position pays $30 a month and you would have use of the small house behind the school. It is not much, but it has 2 rooms and a good stove. $30 a month. It was not a fortune, but with a house provided, it would be enough to live on. Sarah would be independent again, beholden to no one. The relief was almost overwhelming. "I accept," she said. "When would you like me to start?" "School begins the first Monday in September," Mr. Garrett said. "That gives you 2 weeks to prepare. We will have the house cleaned out and ready for you." Sarah left the store feeling as if she could float. Emma would have a home, an education, and stability. Sarah would have work that mattered and wages of her own. It was more than she had dared hope for just a month ago. Isaac was waiting outside with the wagon. One look at her face told him the news. "They gave you the position." "They did." Sarah climbed up beside him, her smile radiant. "Oh, Isaac, they are giving me the house behind the school, too. Emma and I will have our own home." Isaac felt his own smile falter slightly. He had grown accustomed to having Sarah nearby, to seeing her at meals and in the evenings, but he knew this was what she needed. "That is wonderful news, truly." Sarah heard something in his voice and looked at him closely. "It is not far from the Harper Ranch, just a few miles. You could still visit if you wanted to." "I would like that," Isaac said quietly. "I would like that very much." They rode back to the ranch in companionable silence, but the air between them felt charged with things unsaid. The next 2 weeks passed in a flurry of preparation. Mrs. Harper helped Sarah sew 2 new dresses suitable for teaching. Isaac and the other ranch hands moved furniture into the little house, fixing a loose step on the porch and replacing several broken window panes. Sarah went through the school's limited collection of books and supplies, making lists of what was needed. Emma was excited about starting school, though nervous about meeting the other children. "What if they do not like me?" she asked her mother one evening as Sarah tucked her into bed. "Then you will be kind anyway," Sarah said, smoothing her daughter's hair. "And eventually they will come around. Good hearts have a way of winning people over." "Like Mr. Henderson?" Emma asked. "He has a good heart and we like him." Sarah felt her cheeks warm. "Yes, like Mr. Henderson. Do you think he will visit us in our new house?" "I hope so, sweetheart." "Me too," Emma said, snuggling into her blanket. "He makes you smile, Mama. You did not smile much before." Out of the mouths of children, Sarah thought. Her daughter had seen what she had been trying to hide even from herself. The night before they moved to town, Mrs. Harper hosted a small dinner in their honor. It was just the household: Mrs. Harper, Sarah, Emma, Isaac, and 2 other ranch hands. Cook had prepared a feast, and there was even a cake for dessert. It was the kind of warm, family gathering that Sarah had not experienced in far too long. After dinner, Isaac asked Sarah to walk with him. They strolled toward the barn in the cooling twilight, the sounds of Emma's laughter drifting from the house behind them. "I am going to miss having you here," Isaac said. "The place will seem quiet without Emma running around, without you humming in the kitchen." "We will miss being here," Sarah replied honestly. "You have all been so kind. This place gave me back my strength and my hope." They reached the corral fence and leaned against it, watching the horses graze in the pasture. Isaac pulled something from his pocket and held it out to her. It was a small carved wooden bird, simple but beautifully made. "I am not good with words," Isaac said. "But I wanted you to have something to remember me by, to remember this place." Sarah took the carving, running her fingers over the smooth wood. "You made this. I like to carve in the evening sometimes. Helps me think." Isaac cleared his throat. "I know you need time, Sarah. I know you are just starting to find your feet again. But I want you to know that when you are ready, if you are ever ready, I will be here. I will wait as long as it takes." Sarah looked up at him, this good man who had saved her life and asked nothing in return. "Isaac, you should not wait for me. You should find someone free to care for you the way you deserve." "I do not want someone else," Isaac said simply. "I want you. But I understand if you do not feel the same way, if you never do. I just needed to say it so you know." Sarah reached up and touched his face, her hand gentle against his rough cheek. "I do feel something for you. That is what frightens me. It has only been a few months since Robert died. What kind of woman moves on so quickly?" "A woman who survived," Isaac said. "A woman who kept herself and her child alive through determination and strength. A woman who deserves to be happy again." He covered her hand with his own. "There is no proper timeline for grief, Sarah. You loved your husband, mourned him sincerely. But you are still alive and you have the right to live." Tears slipped down Sarah's cheeks. "I do not know how to do this. Then we will figure it out together, slowly. No rush." Isaac squeezed her hand gently. "You go to town, start your new position. I will visit on Sundays if you will have me. We will spend time together. Let things develop naturally. And if you decide eventually that you do not want this, that you cannot move forward, I will accept that. But Sarah, please give us a chance." Sarah thought about the long months ahead, about building a new life in Linden. The idea of doing it entirely alone suddenly seemed unbearably lonely. "Sunday visits would be nice," she said softly. "Emma would like that too, and you?" Isaac asked. "Would you like it?" Sarah smiled through her tears. "Yes, I would like it very much." Isaac pulled her into his arms then, holding her carefully as if she might break. Sarah let herself lean against his solid warmth, let herself accept comfort and strength from someone else. It felt terrifying and wonderful all at once. The little house behind the school was indeed small, but it was clean and sound. The front room served as kitchen and living space, with a good iron stove and a table with 2 chairs. The back room was barely large enough for the bed and a chest of drawers, but it had a window that let in morning light. Mrs. Harper had provided linens and dishes, and several church ladies had left welcoming gifts: a jar of preserves, a loaf of bread, a pot of stew. Sarah stood in the middle of the front room, holding Emma's hand, and felt a fierce pride wash over her. This was theirs. Modest as it was, no one could take it away as long as she did her job well. She had climbed up from the lowest point of her life and found solid ground again. "It is perfect, Mama," Emma said, running to explore every corner. School began on a Monday morning with 15 students ranging in age from 6 to 14. Sarah's heart pounded as she faced them for the first time, all those curious and skeptical faces. But she had prepared well. and she drew on reserves of strength she had not known she possessed. She established clear rules and expectations, organized the students by ability rather than age, and threw herself into teaching with fierce determination. Some of the older boys tested her at first, but Sarah met their challenges with calm firmness. When young Billy Thornton, the banker's son, tried to disrupt class with pranks, Sarah assigned him the task of tutoring the younger students in mathematics, a subject he excelled in. Forced to take responsibility, he became one of her best helpers. The days developed a rhythm. Sarah taught from 8 until 3, then spent time preparing lessons while Emma did her own schoolwork. In the evenings, they would cook simple meals, read together, and sometimes walk into town. Sarah was careful with her wages, determined to save what she could and eventually repay Isaac. True to his word, Isaac rode into town every Sunday after church. He would arrive at noon with a basket of food from Mrs. Harper's kitchen and spend the afternoon with Sarah and Emma. They would picnic if the weather was nice, or sit in the little house playing cards and talking if it was not. Emma adored him, chattering about her week at school and begging him to tell stories about the ranch. For Sarah, these Sundays became the highlight of her week. She found herself watching the road on Sunday mornings, her heart lifting when she saw Isaac's familiar figure approaching. They talked about everything and nothing, their conversations easy and comfortable. Isaac told her about his dreams of owning his own ranch someday, about the land he had his eye on north of town. Sarah shared memories of her childhood, her hopes for Emma's future, her growing confidence as a teacher. Slowly, carefully, they grew closer. Isaac did not push, did not demand more than Sarah was ready to give. But the affection between them deepened with each passing week, unmistakable in the way he looked at her, the way she unconsciously leaned toward him when he was near. By October, the whole town was talking about the schoolteacher and the cowboy. It was not scandalous exactly, but there was definitely interest. Sarah heard the whispers, saw the speculative looks. She knew she should probably be more discreet, wait longer before entertaining male company. But when she thought about sending Isaac away, about not seeing him for propriety's sake, her heart rebelled. One Sunday in late October, after Emma had run off to play with a friend, Isaac and Sarah walked through the fallen leaves behind the school. The air was crisp, autumn painting the world in shades of gold and rust. "The ranch north of town is going up for sale," Isaac said. "The owner is moving to California. I have almost enough saved for a down payment." Sarah felt a flutter of panic. "You would leave the Harper Ranch?" "Eventually, yes. Not right away, but in the spring maybe. I have been working toward this for years, Sarah, having my own place, building something that is mine." He stopped walking and turned to face her. "But lately, I have been thinking about what kind of life I want there. And Sarah, I cannot imagine it without you." Sarah's breath caught. They had been so careful, taking things slowly, but suddenly the future was rushing toward them. "Isaac, let me finish," he said gently. "I know it has only been 6 months since your husband passed. I know people will talk. But Sarah, life is uncertain. We both know that better than most. When you find something good, something real, you do not let it slip away because the timing is not perfect." "What are you asking me?" Sarah whispered. "I am asking you to marry me. Not today, not tomorrow. But in the spring, when I buy that ranch. I am asking you to take a chance on building a life with me, on letting me carry some of your burdens like I promised that first day." Isaac took her hands in his. "I love you, Sarah. I love your strength and your determination and the way you love Emma. I love how you hum when you cook and how you watch the sunset. I love everything about you, and I want to spend my life showing you that every single day." Tears streamed down Sarah's face. "I love you too," she said, the words breaking free like a dam bursting. I have been so afraid to admit it, afraid it was too soon, afraid of what people would think. But Isaac, I do love you. You gave me back my life, and then you gave me reason to want to live it fully again." Isaac pulled her close, and this time when he kissed her, Sarah kissed him back without hesitation. It was different from kissing Robert, but that was all right. This was a different love, born from different circumstances. It did not diminish what she had felt before. It simply made space for something new. "Yes," Sarah said when they finally pulled apart, "I will marry you in the spring." Isaac's smile was brighter than the autumn sun. "You have made me the happiest man in Texas." They told Emma that evening, and the little girl squealed with delight. "Does this mean Mr. Henderson will be my new papa?" Isaac knelt down to her level. "I would be honored to be your papa, Emma, if that is all right with you. I know I cannot replace your first father, but I promise I will love you and your mama with everything I have." Emma threw her arms around his neck. "I think Papa would be glad Mommy has someone to take care of her. He asked me to look after her before he died, but I am just little. I am glad you are here to help." Sarah covered her mouth, crying and laughing at the same time. How had she gotten so lucky to have this man and this beautiful child? The engagement caused quite a stir in Linden. Some people thought it was too soon, that Sarah should mourn longer. But most folks saw a practical arrangement that made sense. A widow with a child and a hard-working cowboy who could provide for them both. And anyone who saw them together could see the genuine affection between them. Mrs. Harper was delighted. "I knew it," she crowed when Isaac told her the news. "I saw it from the first day, the way you looked at her." The winter months passed in a blur of planning. Isaac worked extra hours to add to his savings, determined to have enough for a proper down payment. Sarah continued teaching and saved every penny she could spare. They decided to marry in April, just after the school term ended and after Sarah had been widowed for a full year. Isaac began making improvements to the ranch he would buy, working on weekends to repair the house and outbuildings. Sarah visited when she could, walking through the empty rooms and imagining their life there. It was bigger than the little house behind the school, with 3 bedrooms and a real parlor. The land was good, with water access and enough grazing for cattle. "We could have a garden here," Sarah said, standing in what would be the kitchen. "A big one with vegetables and flowers." "Whatever you want," Isaac said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "This will be your home, Sarah. I want you to make it exactly as you like." Sarah leaned back against him, feeling safe and cherished. "I want it to be our home. Yours, mine, and Emma's. A place we build together." As winter gave way to spring, the town prepared for the wedding. It would be a simple ceremony in the church, followed by a meal at the Harper Ranch. Sarah sewed a new dress, cream-colored calico with lace at the collar. Emma would wear yellow and carry flowers. Isaac bought a new suit, the first he had owned in his life. The night before the wedding, Sarah stood on the porch of the schoolhouse, watching the stars. Tomorrow she would become Mrs. Isaac Henderson. Tomorrow she would start a new chapter of her life. It felt right and terrifying all at once. "Cannot sleep?" Mrs. Harper asked, stepping out to join her. She had come to stay the night, helping with final preparations. "Too much excitement, I suppose," Sarah said. "Or perhaps some nerves," Mrs. Harper smiled kindly. "That is natural, dear. Marriage is a big step, even when you have done it before." "I loved Robert," Sarah said quietly. "I need you to know that. This is not about replacing him or forgetting him. Of course you loved him. And you will always carry those memories." Mrs. Harper took her hand. "But Sarah, you are allowed to love again. The heart has infinite capacity for love. What you feel for Isaac does not diminish what you felt for Robert. It simply means you are brave enough to open your heart again after loss." Sarah squeezed her hand gratefully. "Isaac saved my life. not just on that road, but in all the ways that matter. He gave me back myself. And you gave him purpose, Mrs. Harper said. I have known Isaac for 5 years, and I have never seen him as happy as he has been these past months. You are good for each other. The wedding day dawned clear and beautiful. Sarah dressed carefully, her hands shaking only a little as she fastened the buttons on her dress. Emma helped, chattering excitedly about the ceremony and the cake that would be served after. The church was full. It seemed the whole town had turned out, curiosity and genuine goodwill bringing them together. Sarah walked down the aisle with Emma at her side, and her eyes locked on Isaac standing at the altar. He looked handsome in his new suit, his face full of love and promise. The ceremony was brief and traditional. Sarah spoke her vows in a clear voice, meaning every word. When Isaac slipped the simple gold band on her finger, Sarah felt something settle in her chest, a sense of rightness and homecoming. I now pronounce you man and wife, the minister said. You may kiss your bride. Isaac cupped Sarah's face in his hands and kissed her tenderly, and the church erupted in applause. Sarah laughed against his lips, happiness bubbling up inside her like champagne. The celebration at the Harper Ranch lasted well into the evening. There was music and dancing, more food than anyone could eat, and toast after toast to the happy couple. Sarah danced with Isaac, with Emma, with various townspeople who wanted to offer their congratulations. She felt light as air, as if she might float away from sheer joy. As the sun set, Isaac pulled Sarah aside. Ready to go home, Mrs. Henderson, the name sent a thrill through her. Yes, let me collect Emma. They rode to the ranch in Isaac's wagon, Emma asleep between them, exhausted from the excitement. The house was dark when they arrived, but Isaac had prepared everything beforehand. He carried Emma to her new bedroom and laid her gently in bed while Sarah tucked her in. Sweet dreams, baby, Sarah whispered, kissing her daughter's forehead. Then Isaac took her hand and led her to their bedroom. He had brought in wildflowers that morning, filling the room with their sweet scent. The bed was made with new quilts, and candles cast soft light over everything. Sarah, Isaac said, suddenly nervous, I want you to know that there is no rush for anything. We can take our time, Sarah silenced him with a kiss. Isaac, I love you, I want this. I want all of it, everything that comes with being your wife. She saw relief and desire flash across his face. I love you too, more than I can say. They came together slowly, gently, learning each other with patience and care. Isaac was tender, always checking that Sarah was comfortable, that she wanted this as much as he did. And Sarah, who had thought her heart too damaged for passion, found herself responding with a fierce need that surprised them both. Afterward, they lay tangled together, skin against skin, hearts beating in sync. Sarah rested her head on Isaac's chest, listening to the steady rhythm. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For finding me on that road, for refusing to let me carry everything alone, for loving me. Sarah propped herself up to look at him, for giving me a life again. Isaac traced her face with his fingers, memorizing every feature. You gave me a life too, Sarah. Before you, I was just existing, working toward some distant goal, but you made me want more. You made me want a home and a family and all the things I thought I was too broken for. We are both a little broken, Sarah said, but maybe we can be whole together. I like that, Isaac said, pulling her close again. Whole together. The first year of marriage was not without challenges. Combining their lives, learning to make decisions together, adjusting to being a family, all of it required effort and compromise. There were moments of frustration when Sarah was too independent, when Isaac was too protective. There were disagreements about money and parenting and a dozen small things. But through it all, they held tight to what mattered, their love for each other and their commitment to building a life together. When Sarah struggled with guilt over finding happiness again, Isaac reminded her that joy was not betrayal. When Isaac worried he was not enough, Sarah showed him through word and deed that he was everything she needed. Emma thrived on the ranch. She had a pony of her own, chores that made her feel useful, and the unwavering affection of both her mother and Isaac, whom she now called Papa without hesitation. Sarah continued teaching for another year, but when Emma turned 9 and the demands of the ranch grew, she decided to focus on home and family. In the fall of 1880, Sarah discovered she was pregnant. She told Isaac one evening after supper, watching his face carefully for his reaction. Isaac's expression went through several changes: surprise, disbelief, then pure joy. "Truly, we are having a baby," Sarah nodded, tears in her eyes. "Are you happy?" "Happy." Isaac laughed and swept her into his arms, spinning her around. "Sarah, I am beyond happy. A child of our own, part of you and me. I can hardly believe it." "You already have Emma," Sarah reminded him, "and I love her as my own, you know that. But this—" Isaac placed his hand on her still, flat belly. "This is a miracle I never thought I would have." The pregnancy was healthy, and Sarah felt stronger than she had when carrying Emma. She had enough to eat, no stress beyond the normal concerns, and a husband who treated her like she was made of glass. Isaac fussed over her constantly, insisting she rest more, refusing to let her lift anything heavy. It drove Sarah to distraction even as it made her heart warm. Emma was excited about becoming a big sister. She helped Sarah prepare the nursery, sewing tiny clothes and blankets. "Do you think it will be a boy or a girl?" she asked constantly. "Either would be wonderful," Sarah said, "as long as the baby is healthy." The baby arrived in May of 1881, a squalling, red-faced boy with a full head of dark hair. They named him Matthew Robert Henderson, honoring Sarah's first husband while giving the child his own identity. Isaac held his son with shaking hands, tears streaming down his face. "He is perfect," he whispered. "Sarah, you have given me everything." Sarah, exhausted but glowing, smiled at her husband. "We gave each other everything." The years that followed were full and rich. The ranch prospered under Isaac's careful management. He had a gift for breeding cattle, and his stock became known throughout the region for quality. Sarah managed the household with capable efficiency, raised the children, and still found time to tutor students who needed extra help. Emma grew into a lovely young woman, intelligent and kind. She married at 19 to a young rancher from a neighboring property, someone Isaac had thoroughly vetted and approved of. At the wedding, Sarah cried, remembering the frightened little girl who had sat beside her in that wagon years ago, and marveling at the confident woman she had become. Matthew was followed by 2 more children, a daughter they named Grace in 1883 and another son, James, in 1885. The house rang with laughter and chaos, everything Sarah had once thought lost to her forever. On their 10th anniversary, Isaac took Sarah on a picnic to the spot where he had first proposed, back when it was empty land and future dreams. They sat on a blanket watching their children play, Matthew chasing Grace while little James toddled after them. "Do you remember that day I found you on the road?" Isaac asked. "How could I forget?" Sarah leaned against his shoulder. "I thought it was the end, I had nothing left. And look at us now." Isaac's voice was full of wonder. 3 children, a successful ranch, a life I could never have imagined. Sarah turned to face him, her hand cupping his weathered cheek. The years had been kind to Isaac, adding maturity but not diminishing his strength. "You told me to rest, that you would carry my burdens. You have carried them, Isaac, every day, but you have also given me so much more than help. You have given me love and partnership and a reason to greet each morning with joy." Isaac kissed her softly. You carried me too, Sarah. You gave me purpose and family and a home that is more than just walls and roof. You made my dreams into reality." They sat together as the sun set, painting the sky in those glorious colors Sarah had always loved. Their children's laughter floated on the evening breeze, the sounds of cattle drifted from the pasture, and somewhere in the house, supper waited to be cooked. It was an ordinary moment in an ordinary life, and it was absolutely perfect. As the children grew, Isaac and Sarah grew older together with grace. There were hard times, still droughts that tested the ranch, illnesses that frightened them, the normal struggles of raising children. But they faced everything side by side, partners in every sense. Matthew showed his father's gift with animals and took over more of the ranch operations as Isaac's hair turned gray. Grace inherited her mother's love of teaching and began helping with the children of ranch hands. James, the baby, surprised everyone by becoming a gifted carpenter, his hands creating beautiful things from wood just as Isaac had once carved that small bird. Emma's children began arriving, making Sarah and Isaac grandparents. Watching Isaac with his grandchildren, patient and loving, Sarah's heart swelled with gratitude. This man who had saved her life had given her so much more than survival. He had given her a legacy. On a summer evening in 1895, Sarah and Isaac sat on the porch of their home, now expanded and improved over the years. Their bodies showed the passage of time. Isaac's hands were gnarled from decades of ranch work. Sarah's hair was more silver than brown, but the love between them remained as strong as ever. "You ever regret it?" Sarah asked suddenly. "Taking on a widow and her child all those years ago? You could have had an easier life." Isaac looked at her in surprise. "Regret loving you, regret the life we built. Sarah, that is the most foolish thing you have ever said, and you are not a foolish woman." Sarah laughed. "I suppose I am being silly. It is just, looking back on everything, I sometimes marvel that it all happened, that you happened." "We happened to each other," Isaac corrected. "I needed you as much as you needed me, even if I did not know it at the time." He took her hand, his thumb tracing the familiar landscape of her knuckles. "You know what I remember most clearly from that first day?" "What?" "Your hands on those reins. You were half dead from exhaustion and starvation. Your whole world had collapsed, but you were still holding on, still trying to save your daughter, still fighting. That is when I knew you were special. That is when I started falling in love, even though I did not realize it yet." Tears slipped down Sarah's cheeks. After all these years, Isaac could still make her cry with his words. "I am glad I held on. I am glad you found me. So am I, love, so am I." They sat together as they had 1,000 times before, watching the sunset paint the Texas sky. Inside the house, they could hear Grace helping with supper while Matthew discussed cattle breeding with James. From the barn came the sound of ranch hands finishing evening chores. Life continued around them, this beautiful life they had built from nothing but determination and love. Sarah thought back to that desperate woman on the road, broken and defeated, certain she had reached the end. She thought about the moment strong arms had lifted her, a deep voice promising that everything would be all right. She thought about Sunday visits and slow courtship, about learning to love again, about building a family and a legacy. "What are you thinking?" Isaac asked, always attuned to her moods. "I am thinking about how life surprises us, how what seems like the end can actually be a beginning." Sarah squeezed his hand. "I am thinking about how grateful I am that you would not let me carry my burdens alone, that you insisted on helping even when I was too proud to ask. You would have done the same for me," Isaac said simply. "That is what love is, Sarah. Carrying each other's burdens, sharing the weight of the world, making the journey easier by walking it together. Yes, Sarah agreed. That is exactly what love is. As darkness fell and stars began to emerge, they remained on the porch, content in each other's presence. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and joys. There would be grandchildren to dote on, a ranch to manage, a household to run. There would be laughter and maybe tears, victories and setbacks, all the normal ebb and flow of life. But tonight, Sarah and Isaac simply sat together. Two people who had found each other when both needed saving, who had built something beautiful from the ashes of despair. They had taken broken pieces and made something whole, had transformed burden into blessing. In the kitchen, Grace called them to supper. Isaac stood and offered his hand to Sarah, just as he had done countless times over the years. She took it, feeling the strength in his grip, the steady presence that had anchored her through nearly 2 decades. They walked into the house together, into the warmth and light and love, leaving behind the darkness of who they had been before. Sarah Reynolds Henderson, once a worn and weary widow, now a woman who had reclaimed her joy. Isaac Henderson, once a lonely cowboy, now a husband and father surrounded by family. They had promised to carry each other's burdens, and they had kept that promise every day. In doing so, they had discovered that sharing the weight made it lighter, that walking together made the road shorter, that love real, committed, enduring love could transform everything. Years later, when Sarah passed quietly in her sleep at the age of 73, Isaac held her hand to the last. He mourned her deeply, but not with regret. They had been blessed with 47 years together, had raised children and grandchildren and seen the new century arrive. Their love story had been written across decades, a testament to the power of kindness and courage. Isaac followed her 18 months later, his last words a whisper of her name. Their children buried them side by side on a hill overlooking the ranch, with a simple stone that read, "Together they carried the weight of the world and found it light." The ranch passed to Matthew and eventually to his children, the Henderson name becoming synonymous with quality and integrity in that part of Texas. Grace's daughter became a teacher, carrying on Sarah's legacy. James built homes throughout the county, each one solid and beautiful. And sometimes, on summer evenings, when the grandchildren and great-grandchildren gathered for reunions, someone would tell the story of how it all began, with a worn and weary widow on a dusty road and a cowboy who refused to let her carry her burdens alone. It was a story of salvation and second chances, of love born from kindness, of two broken people who made each other whole. It was, in the end, the best kind of story, one that was completely true. The legacy Sarah and Isaac built together stretched far beyond the ranch and their immediate family. The values they instilled, the example they set, the love they shared, all of it rippled outward, touching lives they would never know. Emma's children grew up hearing stories of grandmother Sarah's strength and grandfather Isaac's kindness. They passed those stories to their children, and the stories lived on, becoming family legend, then family mythology, then simply the foundation of who they were. On the ranch, in the house that Isaac had built and Sarah had made a home, life continued. Each generation added their own touches while respecting what came before. The carved wooden bird that Isaac had given Sarah was passed down carefully, displayed in a place of honor. It became a symbol of the family's beginning, of the moment when love first took root. But perhaps the most important legacy was the simplest, the knowledge that it is never too late to start again, that accepting help is not weakness, that love can bloom even in the harshest circumstances. Sarah had been at her absolute lowest when Isaac found her, but she had still held on, still fought, still hoped. And Isaac, who could have ridden past a stranger's trouble, had instead chosen compassion. That choice, made on a dusty Texas road in 1878, had created a dynasty of love and strength that would endure for generations. It proved that a single act of kindness could change the world, maybe not the whole world, but absolutely the world of those it touched. In the town of Linden, the schoolhouse where Sarah had taught still stood well into the 20th century. A plaque was eventually placed there, commemorating the widow who became a teacher, who raised fine children, who helped shape young minds. But those who really knew the story understood that the plaque told only the smallest part of it. The real story was written in the lives of her descendants, in the strength they showed in hard times, in the compassion they extended to strangers, in the way they loved fiercely and completely. The real story was in how they understood that burdens are lighter when shared, that asking for help takes courage, that loving again after loss is not betrayal but brave affirmation of life. Sarah and Isaac had taught all of that without meaning to, simply by living their truth, by building their life together one day at a time, by never taking for granted the miracle of their second chance. And so the story ended where all the best stories end. Not with dramatic flourish or grand gestures, but with quiet legacy, with lives well lived, with love that endured beyond death, with the sure knowledge that what they built together would outlast them both. The worn and weary widow had found rest. The cowboy had kept his promise to carry her burdens. And in doing so, they had created something infinitely more precious than either had dared dream. A love story for the ages, a family that would carry their values forward, a testament to the power of human connection and compassion. Their story was finished, but its impact would never end. And that, perhaps, was the most fitting conclusion of all.